on Saturday, we have a tremendous rally, and I hope you're all going to be there. It's in Wildwood, New Jersey, where there's going to be a big crowd, and we're going to be saying a lot. We'll be able to campaign on Saturday.
Former President Donald Trump is out of the courtroom for the weekend. He will be heading to New Jersey to hold a campaign rally in the southern shore town of Wildwood. He drew a massive crowd there in January 2020 and is expecting a repeat of that tomorrow. Guess who was there at that rally back in 2020? Outnumbered's Kayleigh McEnany. She was the former press secretary to President Trump at that time, and she joins us now. So, Kayleigh, that was one for the record books, as I recall. It was a huge rally. But a lot of people would say, well, wait a second. Trump lost New Jersey by 16 in 2020. There is an Emerson poll that shows him within 5. But why would you spend your time in New Jersey as opposed to North Carolina, Georgia, or Pennsylvania?
Well, as we heard today from former President Trump, he thinks he can win New Jersey. He said that he's hoping to put new states in play, which is a great and admirable goal. But what strikes me are two reasons that you want to do this here. Number one, you hit the Philadelphia media market. So Pennsylvania, of course, a swing state that President Trump won in 2016. He wants to pull it back into his column. But number two, the energy in Wildwood, New Jersey is really interesting. I remember being at that rally, showing up around midnight the night before, and there were hundreds of people camped out. There was, wow, I would say, one of the most energetic rallies I've been to. So way to draw a contrast between the energy at the rally, a man of the people, and then the court cases where you see President Donald Trump sequestered in a courtroom. I think it has that effect, having that energizing rally, and the contrast is pretty evident.
Well, he's trying, Kayleigh, to take advantage of all the network coverage of this, trial. It's been going on now for 15 days. And so every time he comes out before and after, he'll talk about the trial as much as he can with his gag order. And then he'll go on to the issue of the day, which has been very smart for him, because now he can respond to what the president is doing, whether it's about Israel or whatever else, protesters. But how much, can that really fill in for the actual face-to-face campaign time that he is missing out on every single day, where he could have been flying state to state to state, and he would?
Yeah, here's where I think it advantages him. And where it could disadvantage. I've heard you intimate earlier, Aisha, and I think you're exactly right, that we've seen kind of a pivot in his messaging outside of the courtroom. It used to be more on the defensive side, defending himself from the cases. Now it's more on the offense side. We heard him talk about inflation today. We heard him talk about Israel. He's really using these moments to drive the issues home. But here's where he's advantaged in this incident. He's driving the narrative in a way where, other networks would not cover his rallies. Many of them are covering his remarks outside of the courtroom. So if he can't drive a message on the campaign trail that's picked up far and wide, he can do so outside the courtroom. And he's changed the way he's messaging. I completely agree, to great effect over the last 2 weeks.
So this whole campaign of lawfare against the president has been cast by many observers as saying, well, if Biden can't beat him at the polls, and polls show that he's losing Biden in most swing states, then the only way to get Trump is to keep him off the trail by keeping him tied up in court and maybe just throw his rear end in the hoosgow as well. But it looks like that strategy is crumbling quickly with the order from Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida, where she said, I can't make the trial date for the end of May, so I'm going to postpone indefinitely. The appellate court in Georgia saying we're going to hear Donald Trump's appeal of the Fani Willis order from the lower court. The lawfare thing does not seem to be working. Is there a chance, Kayleigh, that Biden might just have to face Donald Trump at the polls November 5th?
Yeah, it appears so. I mean, John, look, if you scripted this out, of course, no one ever wants to be indicted. I'm sure the former president didn't want any of these cases. But if that's the cards you're dealt and you want to script it out to the best of your ability, you couldn't have scripted it any better. Having Alvin Bragg's case come first, which every legal analyst would tell you is really bunk and toothless. The way the prosecution has brought up witness after witness, and Hope Hicks and Madeline Westerhout all speaking of him glowingly, it almost seems like witnesses for the defense. This is the way you'd want to do it. I think he at least gets a hung jury here. Should be an acquittal in my view, but I think he at least gets a hung jury. And what a tailwind that would be behind him. You're not staring down any other cases before the election, But the one you did stare down, you got a tailwind behind you because you got a hung jury. I think that's going to be the effect of this trial, and I think it's going to badly backfire on the Democrats.
I think it's a great point. Kayleigh, really quickly, I want to play this soundbite from Senator Joe Manchin. Brian Kilmeade is having him on his show, and he was asked, do you think that President Trump could win again in November? And here's his answer.
Oh, I most certainly do. All pragmatic working people, hardworking people, they don't want a government jumping on your back, telling you what to do and making it harder for you. They believe in freedoms and democracy. They believe in all of that. They believe in giving a helping hand, but they believe you ought to get off your butt and do something sometimes.
Okay. Kayleigh, it doesn't surprise me because I know Joe Manchin very well, and I know that he likes to present himself and himself only as the last standing moderate Democrat. Was it surprising to you what he said?
Not at all. I mean, to your point, he's one of the few moderates that we have left in Congress, really one of the centrists. So many of the others have been forced out. It's interesting to hear him say that. I think he's right. He's listening to people in his district. I spoke to a mom this week who said, my daughter is married. Both her and her husband have great jobs. They ended up getting an $80,000 windfall and thought they'd be able to afford a house. But even with $80,000, it wasn't enough for a down payment. And then, of course, you're staring down huge interest rates on top of that. That's the reality people are dealing with. And someone like Joe Manchin talks to people in his district, and I imagine he's hearing a lot of that.
Kayleigh, great to catch up with you this afternoon. Thanks so much for hanging around. We'll see you Monday on Outnumbered.
Yes.
Have a great weekend.